everything is nothing. I would like to share another one with you. You are never too old to feel a little younger. That's what our health principles do. You are never too old to feel a little younger. We are so happy to have Dr. Sweat again with us to deal with this very important topic of leaky gut. I was thinking that his name, Dr. Sweat, is very appropriate, simply because to be in good health takes a degree of sweating. That sweat means we have to exercise some kind of desire and exert ourselves in some way to be willing to practice these health principles. Let us bow our heads in prayer as we bring him on. Father in heaven, we thank you again for the gift of health. We thank you for the principles you have laid down, which, if we apply, would assist us in living the abundant life. We pray that you would be with Dr. Sweat now as he leads out in this important session. Bless us to this end, we pray, in Jesus' name. Amen.
All right, we have Dr. Sweat coming in a second, but I wanted to tell you, you'll see a lot of guys wearing these shirts today. The Arizona Conference Camp shirt, or I should say Arizona Conference shirt, here at camp meeting. Those are the guys who helped set up camp. Besides, we gave Scott and Angie a big yay and kudos to start the camp because they're the ones that keep it good all year round. The rest of the group comes in, sets up the chairs, and gets things set up for camp. So if you see people wearing a shirt like this, like Elder Williams, just say thank you, because they're the ones that tried to make this camp as nice as they could possibly make it for you all to be here. I am so thankful to introduce my friend Bill Sweat today, Dr. William Sweat. I've known for a long time. In fact, as he mentioned, I was the one that baptized him in 1988. I have followed him all along, through his career, through his training at Johns Hopkins, and kind of kept an eye on what he's been doing. And he's really been a blessing to his church, his local community, and he's been a blessing to us through this camp meeting so far. So share with us, Dr. Bill, about leaky gut. I might need to know about that one as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Elder Keys. Morning. Okay, we're going to learn about a problem I told a participant today is the problem of America. This is a big problem. Leaky gut. How many of y'all have heard of leaky gut? All right. Good. Well, maybe I won't teach everybody something today, but I'll teach at least half the crowd. I'm sure you can learn something. Every time I go to a lecture, I always learn something. So is your stomach what ails you? More than you would think. More than you would think. More than you would think. And we're also going to go over what to do about it. This week we've been going over why we should be healthy, so that we're healthy physically, mentally, spiritually. Why? Not just for ourselves, but for the others around us, right? To be a secure person that other people can lean on to find Jesus. Because people want to be around people that are healthy. They're like, what's he doing? Because I want to be healthy too. And God has set us as a beacon on the hill to be a light in the world, correct? So we're going to go over what leaky gut is and how it could affect other parts of your body and what to do about it. Let's start. So, for the gastroenterologist, the digestive tract is the most important system of the body because you are what you eat, correct? Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you guys agree with me on that, man. I have an argument with the cardiologists and the neurologists about these sort of things. But as we learned yesterday, the gut does control the brain. As the professors of neurobiology at Stanford University agreed with me. Thank you very much. Yesterday, we saw how the gut can control the brain, so much so that some people even question the concept of free will, which is a big issue for church-going people, because free will is your ability to choose Jesus, right? Amen. Today, we should see the gut is involved in the regulation and proper function of other parts of the body as well. Recently, I had the opportunity to go on a medical missionary trip with Med Missionary led by Mercy Ballard and Dr. Joyce Cho. And one of the things I took away from it, we gave talks in Arequipa and Lima. It was a great trip. And love the people of Peru. And I love their dogs. These are the calmest dogs I've ever seen in my life. These dogs that sit around, you walk by them, they don't do anything, they don't bark. They walk down the street right next to you. These are the calmest dogs you'll ever see. And you're going to see why today too, because there's something special about Peru I'm going to show you. But one of the other things I learned about Peru was there was a famous lifestyle and preventive medicine doctor there named Carlos Casanova Lenti. And for over 50 years, he would tell his apprentices or his proteges that death begins in the gut. Why did this man, very accomplished, best lifestyle preventive medicine in Peru, say this? We're going to look at this today. Recent scientific discoveries are verifying that the health of our gut can affect other areas of our body in cryptic and inflammatory ways that are being elucidated. Let's see how this works. So, leaky gut. What it is your gut starts to leak. It's like the inside of you, it's like a donut, but your body has it, you put food in here and it just sort of goes to this little donut hole through your body and come out the other end, right? It's like we were able to get, as the evolutionists say, we came out of the water. It allowed us to come out of the water, the evolutionists would tell us, right? Because we had to be able to preserve that. So what happens with leaky gut, you start losing that ability. You start leaking into that little hole. And you lose all of your fluids and proteins and minerals, everything that makes you you, and you sort of wither away. So infections that you might know of are things like cholera, things like that. Infection, invasion with bacteria, virus, and fungi cause these sort of things. There's pathophysiologic states, as I said, like cholera. As we know, that used to cause major problems before the advent of antibiotics, right? And sanitation. Giardia, Campylobacter, Salmonella, Shigella, E. coli, all those things cause leaky gut. Autoimmune diseases or immune dysregulated diseases like lupus, Crohn's, which is inflammatory bowel disease, celiac disease, collagenous colitis, they cause that. Protein-losing enteropathy. So we as gastroenterologists have known this for a long, long time. But now you have this term leaky gut, and this is what it's talking about. Over the past 30 years or so, there's been this rise in this thing called leaky gut. Why? Because it's little things. We thought were little things that were causing you to lose a little water, liquid here, proteins here, minerals here. But now it's becoming more and more of a problem, and we got to figure out why. And that's what we're going to address today. Other things are new agents in the environment. Things have changed, right? There's new things out there. There was a sugar, for instance, I'll give you an example. There's a sugar called trehalose. Trehalose didn't exist until about 2000. So what they do is they take a potato and they start chopping off little carbohydrates off the potato and they created a new sugar. It's real cheap, it's called trehalose. Well, in the gastroenterology journals, we found out that little new sugar actually increases the rate of C. diff. It's like sugar. It's like putting fertilizer on this GI infection we call Clostridium difficile, or short C. diff. Some of you guys have heard of that, right? It is not nice. It gives you really foul odor, can cause toxic megacolon, and can kill you if it gets out of control. So there's also been changes in food production. As you know, we've been using pesticides to grow our foods for many years. Pesticides have changed. There's something new called Roundup. You guys heard of Roundup. Roundup's been causing a lot of problems. And all those pesticides, even over the years, have been flowing into the rivers and going into the streams, and it's building up. It's building up in our environment. Medications can cause leaky gut. So these are some of the common leaky gut, I call disruptors. These are the guys you want to put a warrant out, dead or alive, $100. Detergents, emulsifiers. What are emulsifiers? When you go out and buy something that's wrapped up in a package and you want it to be the right texture, emulsifier makes it the right texture. Binds it together so it stays together, doesn't fall apart. Problem is, it can cause leaky gut, and I'll explain that as we go along. Alcohol, tobacco, antibiotics, pesticides, stuff like Roundup, even can cause some food sensitivities. Genetically modified foods, there's been some question about this. There were some animal studies that showed that they do cause that. And nobody's doing the human studies. I don't think anybody really wants to do the human studies, to tell you the truth. Artificial sweeteners, medications like aspirin, ibuprofen, and birth control pills can do that as well. High animal fat diets. This has made the news lately. Ultra-processed foods. Have you guys heard about that? Ultra-processed foods? There was a big article in the paper about that, how it can cause cancer. Basically, it causes leaky gut. It does a lot of bad. Basically, it's going junk food. Ultra-processed food just means junk food, okay? Low gut microbiota diversity. That's sort of a big, long term for you, but I'm going to explain that. That goes back to Peru, actually, so sort of remember that. Hormones, neuromodulators like cortisol and serotonin. So cortisol is good in that you need it to keep your blood pressure up when you're under stress. You need it for stress. But too much of it can be bad. Serotonin, we know 70% is in your gut. You need it. It makes you happy. It makes you feel satisfied, right? But too much of it is bad. Or too little is bad. So what is the microbiome? So part of leaky gut is this whole thing about the microbiome. You say, why are these bacteria so important? Well, we're going to have to discuss that. So there's a symbiotic relationship. When I first started in medical school, that was a while back, I guess now, back in 1990, we knew that these little bacteria were important because we can't make vitamin K ourselves. Vitamin K, you need that. If you don't, if you get cut, you bleed to death. So we know we need these bugs, right? But we didn't know how much we needed them. It's like one of those songs where she goes away and he figures out he really needs her. He's like, I really need her more than I ever thought. And that's the way we are with these little bacteria in our gut. We need them more than we ever thought. There are 100 trillion microorganisms in our gut. That's a lot. Have you ever thought about 100 trillion? Just to compare, our human body has 10 trillion cells, right? So there's 10 times more of them than us in your body. Isn't that crazy? And all the DNA, what's that? Yeah. Where do they fit? That is a good question. Right there, right in the chest. And all the DNA and all those 100 trillion little bugs is 50 to 100 times as much DNA as we have. So that means they could probably stretch from our solar system maybe to the next one, since our DNA can stretch twice the diameter of our solar system, right? I told you that yesterday. The microbiota, what is that? We're going to define this. Microbiota are all the bacteria, the archaea. What is archaea? Archaea are like bacteria. They don't have a nucleus, so they're prokaryotes instead of eukaryotes. And they're thermophiles, so they like it really hot or really cold. So if you go to Yellowstone and you go to Old Faithful, you'll find them there. Or if you go to these other places where it's really cold, like Antarctica, you'll find them there. And sometimes you can find them in the harshest parts of your gut, too. They like the hard parts. Bacteriophages, those are things that attack bacteria. They're usually viruses. They infect the bacteria in your gut. It's like a war down there. It's like bacteria and then the little bacteriophages that come in and infect them, and they're infecting us, and everybody's infecting everybody. And there's viruses, and there's fungi, and there's sometimes parasites. As we mentioned yesterday, parasites can be important in balancing the immune system. It says that, once again, if you look at it from an evolutionary standpoint, they said we needed those parasites. Our immune system was set up to deal with them. From a creation standpoint, our bodies would just be able to deal with the environment that we're in. So that's the microbiota, just all the bugs. Now the microbiome is all the bugs plus all the genetic material. So it's sort of the same thing, right? So that's what we call the microbiome. So a disrupted balance in the microbiome is increasingly associated with allergies, autoimmune disease, metabolic disorders, and neuropsychiatric disorders, which we went over yesterday, correct? So you've got about 2 to 6 pounds of those bugs in your stool. Unbelievable, huh? Up to 30 to 50% of your stool is nothing but bugs. Up to half of it. Can you believe it? So next time you look in the toilet, say, wow, half of that is just bugs. And those bugs live in your GI tract. We call it the gut. I call it the gut. GI tract, your nose, anywhere that there's a surface. Nose, your lungs, your mouth, your skin, any mucosal surface that interacts with the outside world, you have bacteria on it. And as we learned yesterday, that's important when you have a baby, because the baby, when it's born, the baby has no bugs. Can you believe that? The baby has no bugs. So the baby's like a 49er gold rush. Those bugs are like, let's go. And they get a gold rush to go to the baby because the baby doesn't have any bugs. So the baby gets covered with all the little bugs and stuff and gets the mother's bugs, which are good for the baby, right? Fiber is the predominant food for the microbiota. Without that, we're in trouble. And this is the trouble. The signal via fatty acids, so they have, the bugs make all sorts of little metabolites that some of them we don't even know what they do. They make hormones, they make neurotransmitters. These little bugs make short-chain fatty acids that do all sorts of nice things. And they also signal right to the nerves. They'll go up and tickle the nerves, those little neuropod cells that we talked about yesterday. They also they secrete these short-chain fatty acids. And that's one of the main foods for the colon cells that line your tract. And it's also anti-inflammatory. They help stimulate serotonin release. They help stimulate nerve growth. So how do these bugs talk to the body? So they make all these metabolites that are neuroactive, like GABA, tryptophan, glutamine, dopamine, serotonin, and your body's making it too. So they're making these things, and in our body, we're making it too. So you see how it's a symbiotic relationship? We're making these things, and they're making them as well. It's really quite, it's like a double system. And there's bile acid metabolite, there's those short-chain fatty acids, cytokines, and chemokines we just talked about yesterday, which attract other inflammatory cells to a site. And then there's the inflammasomes. This is something new. When I was in college and medical school, we didn't know about inflammasomes, but we're going to talk about them today. Communicate directly, indirectly through neurons, hormones, and other metabolites from the little microbiota. So when you get an altered microbiome, you get certain effects. It can affect your brain, your heart, your joints, your liver, your skin, we talked about yesterday, behavior, emotions. You get pain from that. You get indigestion. You get stress. Like, oh, my stomach, I'm so stressed. Social, I can't go out because I'm just upset. And you get all these strange gut-brain interactions like depression, anxiety, ADHD, anorexia nervosa, all those things. And there's an emergent role of this in irritable bowel syndrome. And as I told you yesterday, remember the little diagram I showed you about obesity? So if you take the stool from a skinny person and put it into an obese person, you can turn that obese person into a skinny person. Or an extrovert, take stool from an extroverted person, put it into an introverted person, you can turn an introvert into an extrovert. You guys remember that? Yeah, sort of interesting, right? So you can be altered. See that? You can be altered. We can alter you by your microbiome. So chronic brain gut stress, long-term brain stress causes an imbalance in the gut microbiome, or vice versa. The microbiome can cause a stress on the brain. And that can spill over into other parts of the body. So this main interaction between your gut and your brain that we talked about yesterday, if something's going wrong either down or up, then you can get a problem in the rest of your body, is what I'm telling you. So you get an increase in cortisol, the stress hormone increases the permeability of the gut and results in systemic inflammation. So you know what that means, right? That means that if the gut's inflamed, the rest of you can become inflamed. My fingers can become inflamed. I get Raynaud's syndrome. My eyes can become inflamed. I can get iritis, right? So you can get an overactive HPA axis. That's the hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal gland axis. That's the endocrine system of your body, right? That releases like your cortisol, your epinephrine, your norepinephrine, all these hormones in your body. And other hormones like ACTH, just multiple hormones we could talk about. Reduction in the hippocampal serotonin and reduction in BDNF. And BDNF, as we talked about yesterday, was brain-derived neurotrophic growth factor. And you need that for your nerves to be happy and to make new nerves. So if you have a problem and you've lost some nerve function, I had a participant the other day talking about somebody in their family had lost some nerve function. Well, BDNF helps to restore that function. When I started medical school in 1990, we didn't think you could create new nerve cells. Now we know you can, and it's through that little hormone called BDNF, or that little molecule called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic growth factor. So this is all a complex system. So you can see here a lot of stuff's going on. If you take it from the bottom up, the little gut microbes are in there, the little villi, the little colon cells are in there, and they're picking up things. You have the little dendritic cell that's reaching out into the lumen, testing it, and saying, hey, there's some sugar in there. Good. We want to eat more. Then it tells the brain to eat some more sugar. And then you have the neuropod cell that's doing the same thing, sending it via the nerves. So the dendritic cell sends it via the immune system, and the neuropod cell sends it via the nerves. So there's two systems. You're like backups. So God's made it so if one system fails, you got a backup system. As a matter of fact, you got 3 or 4 backup systems, like we talked about yesterday, right? 3 parallel systems. So if something goes wrong in your body, you have a way to survive, basically. You'll be stimulated to get something to eat in that case, but there's multiple other reasons that this system works not only for food, but for many other things as well, like for sensing things in your environment. So you can see you have metabolites, neurotransmitters, cytokines, You go up via the nerves on the right, and you go up the vagus nerve, which is the main highway. That's like Highway 95 on the East Coast. Or what's it on the West Coast? Highway 5 for you guys? Highway 5? So the vagus nerve is like Highway 5. And then the spinal nerves over here on the right are like Highway 1. And then over here on the left, you got the little old country roads that go through the back way from Arizona to California. and that right there, you see, goes down to the heart and the brain. So it's a very complex system. Things can go wrong. Things can go wrong. Yesterday, we talked about the one on the top, which is all these neurologic problems like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, multiple sclerosis, depression, anxiety, pain, stress, but other parts of your body too. So if your gut's inflamed, guess what? It could pop up anywhere. It could go to your thyroid. It could go to your joints. It could go to your bowels. It could go to your reproductive organs. It could go to your heart. Wherever the weak part of your body is, and you know what that is, the only thing you got to do is talk to the people in your family and see what kind of diseases your mother had, your grandmother had, your great-grandmother. What runs in the family, mama? And she'll say, oh, my thyroid. Yeah, everybody in the family's got a thyroid problem. Well, if you got an inflamed gut, you're probably going to get a thyroid problem. That would be my guess. Doesn't have to be that way, but it's whatever the weakness in the family is, that's probably where it would pop up if you have an inflamed gut. That's what this is telling you. It's a very common pathway. It's not the only pathway, but it's a very common pathway. So this is a little funny slide I made. It's called prime time. Prime time for what? Prime time for the health message. As we talked about yesterday, it's important because we can help other people, all right? We saw it can cause all those neurologic diseases, and we saw that if you took an intervention to make things better, that those diseases can get better. So it's time for us in our disease. It's prime time, but there's also a lead pipe, and this lead pipe is the problem in America. Not only America, but Western Europe as well. All the industrialized countries. That's what it looks like. Let's see what this is. So this is what your gut looks like. Down on the blue at the bottom, blue America. That's you. It's America. That's blue. That's your colon. Blue is the colon. What's the green? The green is the Air Force, Army, Navy, Marine, SEALs, Space Force. That is the protection. That's the protection for the country, all right? And then across, that's everybody outside of America. You know, we got friends and we got foes. You know who those are, right? And so this is America at peace, Pax Americana, because America is the most powerful nation in the world, right? We keep the peace. But we know every once in a while we got some trouble, like China stirring up a little trouble. I won't get into politics today, but I'm just trying to draw a picture here for you what's going on in the gut. So the green is the mucus. So mucus is this beautiful layer. So just imagine that below us are the cells, and we're in this mucus layer right here. This mucus layer is this lattice structure that's set up in space, and it keeps the microbes up there. So it's like an aquarium. You can see the little sharks, and the Chinese sharks, and the Finnish sharks, and the German sharks, all of them over there. It's keeping everybody over there, right? The problem is, if that structure starts to come down, we don't like that. We don't like people getting too close to us because they're invading our space. Y'all heard of the Monroe Doctrine, right? The Monroe Doctrine? Well, your bowel has a Monroe Doctrine. It doesn't like people getting too close. It just stops. It just starts level red. Level, you go from blue to yellow. I forget the levels. Red, was it orange, red? So it turns to red, and you start going, woo, woo, woo. So that's what happens, and that's when you get inflammation, okay? You got it? So those little colored things at the top are all the different microbes, those 100 trillion little bugs. It's a beautiful slide, isn't it? Yeah. This is what I want to show you. So if you look at the bottom, I know you probably can't see this, but you see a little group to the bottom on the right? That's the United States and Europe. And you see the little group on the left? It's broad and wide, deep and wide. Y'all know that song, right? Deep and wide. That is the third world. We would call it the third world, developing countries. And that broad shoulder is a healthy shoulder. It's healthy because they have many different bugs. And what they've come to the conclusion is if you have many different bugs, you're healthy. And if you have little bitty bugs, you only have a few bugs, you're not healthy. So what is that telling you? That America and Europe are not healthy according to their microbiota. Can you see that? I'll tell you which one's America. America, we're the third from the bottom. And guess which one is the most broad? Which one is the broadest? You can read that? Oh, great. Yeah, Peru at the bottom. And I went to Peru. Maybe that's why those dogs are so calm. As I'll tell you, so there's a professor, is a leader in the field at Stanford University, and he says you should have your dog because your dog helps give you a few extra bugs that are good for you. And those dogs are very calm in Peru. I think I picked up some. I'm feeling much calmer since I went there. I really enjoyed that trip. Maybe I enjoyed it because those bugs made my brain think that I enjoyed it or something, but I really did enjoy that trip to Peru. All right, so here's the issue. Dietary fiber fuels the gut microbiota. And if you don't have fiber in your diet, guess what? Those little bugs are not happy. You know why they're not happy? How would you like it if they didn't open the cafeteria in the morning and then they didn't open it for lunch? Well, that's how those little bugs are feeling when you don't give them any fiber. And I used to laugh at this older gastroenterologist when I first started practicing. He would always tell us, you got to eat your fiber, got to eat your fiber, got to eat your fiber. You know what? He was right. As you look at this slide, you'll also see at the bottom it says the human genome contains 17 genes that degrade fiber. Look at the bottom. The microbiome encodes 60 to 100,000 genes that degrade fiber. So who's doing most of the work to get that fiber degraded? That's making all those little chemicals that we need, like the short-chain fatty acids, to keep us in a state of low inflammation. Those bugs are. And if you're doing the Peru, you've got a lot of bugs that have a lot of potential to degrade it. So a certain bug can degrade certain fiber, another bug degrades different fiber. So the wider the diversity, the more likely you're going to be able to eat. So, for instance, if you try to eat seaweed as an American, you can eat it. You might not digest most of it, but if you're from Asia, where they eat seaweed all the time, they digest it much better than we do, right? And that's what science. Until you get the microbiota that can digest that fiber, you don't digest it that well. So this is a healthy one. So we reversed it. So we're on top. America's on top. There's the mucus layer right there. The yellow is the fiber being degraded, and the red are the bugs that are eating the fiber. You see that? That's what it looks like every day in your gut. If you're eating that fiber they got over in that cafeteria, this is what it looks like. You're healthy. Amen? All right. So this is something called microbiota accessible carbohydrates. Please remember that, MACs. I'm not talking about a Macintosh computer. This is MAC as in good fiber, okay? This is what the bugs can eat. So you can see here the small intestine. If you go on the top, the bugs get the fiber at the bottom, and they make all these metabolites that we love. Guess what happens when you eat the ultra-processed food at the bottom? Sucrose, starch. It gets all absorbed in the small bowel. Nothing reaches the colon. Now, we have bugs in our mouths. We got bugs in our esophagus, in our stomachs, in our small bowels. But most of the work of making all these metabolites that we need is in the colon. So guess what? They don't get it. So you get all these high calories being absorbed in the small bowel. What's the result of that? You get extra calories. You get all these empty calories and you get extra weight. That's what happens to you. So, like I said, you're starving the bugs when you're doing only the simple carbohydrates. When you give that fiber, you get the short-chain fatty acids. And this is the slide I like to show on that one. And so it gives you the quote on the Sonnenbergs who did this research back in 2014. So this is sort of a weird slide. I'm going to show a different one that's a little bit better. But you can see in the A column, you have normal, healthy, which is the one I showed you before. But on the right, you have a bad one. And the mucus layer, as I showed you, is coming down. And you're going from blue to yellow, you're getting to orange. And the dendritic cell is reaching out there and he's saying, hey, these bugs are getting too close to us. And as a matter of fact, there's a bad one in there, and I taste the toxin. And it sends a signal back to the immune system, and the immune system gets revved up. And you get collagenous colitis, you get ulcerative colitis, you get Crohn's, You get celiac disease, you get a lot of different things. It depends on what your body tells it to do as to what disease you get when the bugs get too close. When the bugs get too close, if the bugs don't have anything, and if your bugs don't have anything to eat, what do they eat? Huh? That is correct. They eat you. That's correct. They eat you. They start eating and say, well, nothing's here. What are we going to eat? We're going to eat you. We're going to eat him. So what are they going to eat first? If they got this, huh? They got to eat the mucus. That's what this slide tells you right here. That's what this slide tells you right here. So if you look at that, it's the same diagram again. So America, look at the Western countries, and look at right below it, you get this little blue wave to the right. But if you look at all the healthy countries, or the non-industrialized third world countries, all they have these different bugs that are mainly on the left. Guess what that one on the right, on the bottom is? Anybody have an idea? You guys are on it. You guys are so good. It's a bug. All those little four things on the bottom are bugs. The bug on the bottom likes to eat mucus. And guess where you find that bug that likes to eat mucus? They call it a mucolytic bloom. You ever heard of those blooms in the ocean, those blooms of jellyfish and blooms of krill, blooms? Well, this is a bloom of bugs that like to eat mucus because they have nothing else to eat. So the ones that don't like to eat mucus, they start to die off. And that's why you see the diversity is narrow in the West. We've lost a lot of our microbiota. And the ones that like to eat bugs are just exploding. They say, hey man, it's a party, it's a feast. Nobody wants to eat this but us. We'll eat it. And so they're growing. So why is low diversity bad? So this is why low diversity is bad. Low diversity is bad because you get overweight, more cholesterol, more inflammation, higher insulin levels, higher triglyceride levels, more fatty acids, decreased good cholesterol, HDL, which pulls out the bad cholesterol, and a higher white blood count. So basically, you're inflamed. What does that mean? That means that you're going to get some arthritis, you're going to get a rash, you're going to get something, some type of inflammation somewhere else in your body. It's not going to just stay in the gut. It's going to spill over. So there's an association between dietary fiber and lower risk of all-cause mortality. That means if you eat more fiber, you're less likely to die. So that older gastroenterologist, when I first started practicing, was absolutely correct, right? So there's a 10% reduction in risk for each 10 grams of fiber you eat every day, right? So the average male is supposed to be about 40 to 50 grams of fiber a day. So you got to get your fiber in, okay? Okay. Well, let me see if I missed something there. It said there was a prospective study, had a total of 67,000 deaths, 928,000 cohort members were included, so it showed that the fiber was important. So they took it to the lab, at Stanford University, they took it to the lab, and they said, if we feed these mice a low-fiber diet, will they lose their microbiota diversity, right? So they said first generation, second generation, third generation, fourth generation, we'll just feed them Twinkies and Big Macs or something. I don't know. They just fed them some low fiber, right? And this is what they showed. Diet-induced extinction of gut microbiota compounds over generations. So you had a control down here on the bottom, and they pretty much stayed all the same, right? You see that? The bottom slide, they pretty much stayed, but the top is where they put the low-fiber diet. The bottom is regular meal, and the top is low fiber. And sure enough, with each generation, generation 1, generation 2, generation 3, and generation 4, it got worse and worse. So if you don't sit your family down to a homemade meal, I would say at least 3 times a week, you're doing some damage. You see that? So it's important to sit down to a homemade meal. And I know we're harping about this or that, but it's nothing like a homemade meal. You're going to have to do it. America's going to be a lot better off if we just sit down and cook. All right? So this is another picture of this. So it's a mucus thickness, and you can see it more clearly here. But on the A, on the left, is fiber-rich, nice mucus layers, keeping us far away from the bugs. And your body can tell if it's, usually it's good or bad, but when they get too close, your immune system and your nervous system doesn't like it. even if they're good bacteria, if they're too close, it sets off the alarms, inflammation goes up, and that's what's happening on the right in the fiber-deficient diet. That mucus layer is collapsed, and it's like way down here, and I can wade around in the bugs, is what I'd be doing on the stage right now. And I'd probably want to leave too. All right, so this is something that's new since I was in college and medical school, something called inflammasomes. So what's an inflammasome? It's like a miniature hurricane in your cell. So it's inflammatory signaling via this. So one of them, these little complexes. So when they sense a bacteria nearby, these little bacteria toxins or flagella or anything like that, they'll start sending out signals. So it's different inflammasomes for different types of toxins in your environment or different type of bacterial signals. So it's bacterial loss, these bacterial molecules, stress and disease. And so when they sense that, they'll start to assemble. They say, let's go, let's go, let's go. It's like a fireman. They're all running. And they run, they jump down the fire thing, and they all jump into the truck, and they go, woo! And then they start sending out all these cytokines that are going out all over the place, telling everybody that we got problems. And that's what the inflammasomes are. And this has been linked to neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, depression, anxiety, autoimmune like diseases like psoriasis, lupus, and then diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, everything. It's all over your body, just like we showed on that slide. Depends on where your weakness is where this is going to show up. And so you see these Macs. So remember, Macs is not a McDonald's burger or a Macintosh computer. These are microbiota accessible carbohydrates. In other words, good fiber. So if you're healthy, you're making all these short-chain fatty acids and you got decreased inflammation and everything's healthy. Everybody's hunky-dory. But if you don't, then you have erosion of the mucus layer. And when that happens, you have all this inflammation. And guess what? The junctions between the cells start to crack open wide, and then it's like the invasion. The Romans are coming in through the walls into Jerusalem, right? It's 80, 70 or something. And there's a slaughter going on. And your body's trying to do everything to stop it, which is why you get all this blood and pus and mucus with some of the diseases I deal with. So, is this due to diet? Is it due to strange chemicals? Is it due to hygiene, antibiotics? Is it due to lifestyle? I mean, all these things. What are the root causes of all this? Well, there's a multiple hit hypothesis on Western microbiota. That's us in Europe. And that could be sanitation, that could be C-sects and vaccinations, diet, antibiotics, baby formulas. We're just not getting enough good bacteria to keep ourselves healthy. So could this foreign microbiome inside our guts be dysregulating our immune system? Remember yesterday we showed that your microbiota, or the bacteria in your gut, they're more than just making vitamin K. They're symbiotic with us. They're a master regulator of the immune system. So yes, but what is this foreign? Foreign is, we're going to look at it a different way. So if you look at Tanzania or Malawi or Venezuela, these third world countries, look at that. They have bugs all the way across the spectrum. What about us? And that is what they call a foreign microbiota. We should be looking like the rest of the world, or somebody have a little bit better diversity than what we're having, right? And so that is the foreign microbiota they're talking about. So if you take people that are from these third world countries and bring them over here, yes, you can see it right there. What happens to them? About a quarter of them start to get the American problem. And what's the American problem that's been going on over the past 30, 40 years? Yeah, so we're over half of us now are obese, and we have a diabetes epidemic. Half of us have diabetes now too. But what we're telling you, or what the professor from Stanford is telling you yesterday, is not your fault. It's those bugs' fault. That's what he said, didn't he? It's those bugs' fault. But it's the bugs' fault because we're not feeding ourselves the right way, it looks like. Maybe we're not given the right fiber to regulate this stuff the right way. And as you can see, this long-term residents, you get even more. And then after the second generation, everybody's pretty much like us, right? And you can see on the right chart, your diversity in your microbiota goes down with time, the more time you're here in America. Unless you're cooking your own meals. Unless you're going to the grocery store and going to the produce section and making some wise choices. Isn't it interesting that the inflammatory diseases are on the rise? Look at that, the graph to the right. Crohn's, multiple sclerosis, diabetes, asthma. They're all on the rise. Why is that? Ever since 70. Some of you guys around here about my age or maybe older, we can remember when the days when they didn't have that many fast food restaurants in this country. People that are 40 and less probably don't know that. Could this be an issue for us? Can we repair the microbiome, improve health? This is the question. This is what the major universities in this country are trying to do right now. That's why I said they're putting billions of dollars into this. Stanford already has a whole complex on this. Most of the data is coming out of there. Most of the postdocs are getting jobs wherever they want to go. Most of these guys are publishing articles in the best journals in the world. The best journals are Nature, Science, Cell. They almost publish all their articles in those journals. That's how important this is. That's why those guys have it's like a ticket to being a professor at any university you want to go to if you go there. So Stanford has that. UCLA, I just told you, just opened theirs up. That's how important this is. We have to solve this problem. So does dietary intervention increase diversity and give you better health? The answer they came in this study was yes. It decreases, obesity, improves insulin sensitivity, decreases triglycerides, and decreases inflammation, which is the main thing we're worried about, is that inflammation. That's enemy number one in medicine today. So this professor, Justin Sonnenberg, is one of the leaders in the field, decided he was going to do the test himself. They needed a test subject, so they used his stool. So he gave him a stool sample back in 2010. He did all this stuff. He did what, as we as Adventists been told to do, right? He had a garden. He put a garden in, so he would get the vegetables out of the garden he wouldn't wash them off. He would just pull them out of the garden and stick them in his mouth and just chew on them. Go out and pick the broccoli, put it in your mouth. Pick the peas, put them in your mouth. He didn't use any pesticides, of course. Did it all organic. And you can see his garden down on the left. And his dog that he loves that gives him a little extra couple of types of microbes as well. And you can see in 2010, he had about 600 types of bacteria in his gut. So he was like a Westerner. He didn't have that many. He didn't look that good. But by 2015, 5 years later, he was up to 1,200. He had doubled the number of bugs in his gut just by doing that. So we can do the same thing. As a matter of fact, we've been told as a people to do this. It's time we start doing this. It's time for us to cook. I'm not saying you can't go out. So I go out sometimes too, but I know the importance of this, all right? This is called the best study in the field today. They wanted to find out if fiber was better or if fermented foods were better. And the conclusion that they came with this study was that fermented foods were better. So what they did in the study, so you have to know what the study did. So this is where you have to break down. So this is going to, especially important on the last day, we talk about all these controversies into SDA health. You got to look at the study and see what's going on. So the fermented side of it, they make sure that the fermented food was fresh, that it did have microbiota that were actually working in the microbiota, right? So they made it sure it's good. The fiber, they told the people, just go out and eat fiber, eat as much fiber as you can, and they really didn't put any restrictions on what type of fiber. They didn't tell them to only eat raw or only eat fiber from the garden or make half your fiber from the garden or a quarter from the garden or where you get the bugs on the plant. So it was just any fiber. And so in this case, so me being more of a scientist, I'm being a little picky because I'm biased, right? And there's always bias in science, so that's why you have to have all these controls and stuff. So, but in this study, it was powerful in that it did show that you got an increase in the microbiota diversity, so you got more bugs, and they showed scientifically IL-12, IL-6, IL-10, IL-17, they did decrease. So they decreased the inflammation, and they proved it. This is why this is considered the best study out there right now. And this is why they encourage people to eat kimchi, sauerkraut, kombucha, all these fermented foods. And he actually gives you a recipe. I mean, there was one guy, the podcaster I showed yesterday, he tells you to go to some cookbook, I think it's 4-Minute Chef or something like that, and they teach you how to make your own kombucha at home. Kombucha sometimes can have alcohol in it, so you have to watch it. But if you make your own, you can get it out before the alcohol starts to be fermented and produced. It is a little tough to eat this fermented food if you're not used to it. He said if you go in, hog wild and trying to eat all that stuff at once, it might make you a little dyspeptic, okay? You might be seeing me. But if you have to work, so in this study, they had a lead-in. So you can see they have a baseline, they have a ramp-up period of 4 weeks for people to get used to it. Because most Americans aren't used to eating fermented foods, right? Germans are, Koreans are, that's their cuisine. But for us that are regular Americans, sometimes it's a little tough on our bellies. But this is a very important study. I think we as Adventists could do a study on this too, and it's something that I think we ought to do, something I like to do. Now here's something very interesting. I told you guys about this synthetic biology. So I've always loved biology, that's what I majored in. But anyway, so we can take one of those little bugs and bioengineer it and get it to do something we want it to do. We can get it to treat depression. We can get it to treat arthritis. We can get it to treat heart disease. We can get it to treat whatever we want it to. That's sort of cool. But it might not, we might be making you well, I'd be making the bug a GMO, but it would be like a psychobiotic for psychiatric diseases, or it would be a cardiac type of biotic for cardiac diseases. Very interesting. There's a company they have already out, I forgot the name of it, but if I can remember tomorrow, I'll give that name. I think it's Novomed. All right. So this is the Sonnenbergs at their home, and I don't know if the slide is sort of, but it says making a commitment to fiber consumption that today borders on the comical, and it has the family sitting down to a meal with all these fiber foods, and they have what on top of it? Dirt. Why do they have dirt on there? Yes, it's bugs. They need bugs. And it might even be a little poop, too. I think they told me, because when they said when they made the picture, they said they just sort of laughed about it. They were like, yeah, it's sort of poop. But I don't think they really put that on there. But you see the dogs there, but all those microbiota there to increase the diversity in the family, to make them healthier, right? And they say now that when they go to conferences on this, scientific conferences, the people at the hotels are like, hey, what are you guys doing? They say, what are you talking about? And they say, We've never had to restock the salad bar 10 times, ever. Everybody wants to be a vegetarian. Everybody wants to get their fiber. When they understand what's going on, right? So now you guys understand what's going on too, so you got to make sure you get your fiber too, and tell your friends. All right. So part of what to do about it. So the first part of this, we're going to talk about some things that you can do yourself. So the first part was the wall, the barrier, the intestinal wall, and the mucus layer, the protection. That's the last barrier, the last thing that we can do. So the first thing we can do is rest. So the GI tract is like waves of the ocean, like I told you about yesterday. So the GI tract moves like the ocean, like that. And then you have these big MMCs, cleansing pods, and they push all the way through. They call them big MMCs. And that pushes everything through. So in your stomach, you're grinding the food up, grinding. Well, your stomach only grinds so long, but sometimes you see what you ate in your stool. You ever see that? The corn or the carrot or something like that? Well, that's what happened with the cleanser, because your stomach's supposed to grind everything up till it gets really, really small before it goes through. But the big cleansing wave pushes it on through, just in case. It's a fail-safe. The cleansing wave is a fail-safe in case it's an indigestible substance in your stomach. It has to push it on through, otherwise it sits in your stomach forever. So like a water park, you can't run 24/7, otherwise it'll break down, right? If you let the water park go 24/7, kids are running around all night long, which they will do if you let them, correct? I know when I was that age, I stayed at the water park all night if my friends are there. So, but it would break because you got to have maintenance. Anybody knows that. Anybody who does maintenance knows that if you run this place, if you don't fix the loose things here and the loose things here and oil this and change the oil in the car, what happens? It'll break down. Same thing happens with us. Same thing happens with us. You need time to clean up. We're going to get into that Thursday, but I'm going to let you in on this, okay? So what they're showing now, if you don't get this rest, this intermittent fasting down here, you don't clean up. So intermittent fasting, now we know that if you fast the last meal of the day to the next meal the next day, if it's 12 hours or more, you get a life benefit. You live longer. For 17 hours, you live even longer than that, life benefit. And so what's happening is you're cleaning out the old, the feeble stuff, the squeaky cob or the handle that didn't work anymore. You take that handle off and put on a new handle. That's what happens when you're resting. Why does this work? Oh, it's called autophagy or autophagy, A-U-T-P-H-A-G-Y. and your body goes and takes out all these old cells. Otherwise, those cells, guess what they do? They sit there and they start putting out inflammation, inflammatory signals, and they start making the cells next to them feeble too. And then these feeble cells can put out inflammation that causes another cell to become arthritis, another cell to become cancer, another cell that causes a plaque that can cause a heart attack. You see that? But if you have been doing this, and that's in the spirit of prophecy, right? 2 meal a day program where you sort of have that long time, you'd be living longer. That's what science is telling us now. And there was a guy that I saw at a meeting, an EQ summit in Weimar with Dr. Nelly, and he was in I think it's Botswana. It was a country in Africa. I think it was Botswana. 114 years old, the leader of his Pathfinder group, doing jumping jacks, push-ups. He didn't look a day, this guy, I'm telling you, he didn't look a day past 70. He probably could be 65 in my eyes. And that ain't that far from me. So I'm like, this guy is incredible. I was like, wow. How do you do that? He gets up at 3 o'clock in the morning. He makes his breakfast. He heads to the field. He's back home by 2. He makes his dinner. And he's in bed by sometime between 5 and 6 when the sun goes down. His day works with the sun. So when the sun goes down, he goes down. He doesn't have lights. But he's doing it. He's doing that. And look, he's 114 years old. And that was about 4 years ago. I hope he's still alive. Praise the Lord. Intermittent fasting also decreases visceral fat. That's belly fat. Studies show now that if you stop eating after 5, you decrease your belly fat. So I tell my patients, Doc, I get home at 6. I say, well, just eat as soon as you get home. As soon as you get home, eat. If you can, tell your husband or your wife, come to your job and eat dinner at work if they'll let you, so that you can get that in, if you're really trying to do that. But it's important that 12 hours, whatever it is, and if you start your first meal earlier in the day, it's better. Chewing. Digestion begins in the mouth. I'm just as guilty as you guys. 2 bites, it's down. Ooh, that was so good. Did I really enjoy it? I tell people you should eat like a Frenchman. I don't know if there's any French people in here, but the French, we have one. Praise the Lord. Eat like a Frenchman. The French know how to enjoy their food, correct? They savor every bite. They chew, they swish it around. Sweet palate, sour palate, salt palate. They enjoy it. That's what we should do. For many reasons. Because the GI tract runs on rest, relaxation. The French and the Spaniards know how to do that, and that's important. Instead of the typical 2 to 3 bites, try to do 10 bites and then swallow. Breaking down the foods in your mouth is important because you have enzymes that come out of your mouth that help you break your food down. Some of the dyspepsia and indigestion, all this stuff, it happens because we haven't started breaking this stuff down in your mouth, unless you have a strong stomach. I used to have a strong stomach. Mine got a little weaker with time, maybe because my microbiota shrunk or something. I don't know, but I think it'd be better off chewing well to avoid some of that dyspepsia. The next thing is the acid barrier. So your stomach is an amazing organ in that it has acid, so much acid that you can just dissolve a battery in your stomach, basically. It's a pH of 2. 2 is like really, really strong. That's hydrochloric acid, and your stomach makes hydrochloric acid. So it kills most of the pathogenic bacteria and viruses. The ones that do get in, they figure out a way to get around that. So drinking while you're eating or putting stuff in your mouth is not good because that gives the bugs an easier chance to make it to down and causing problems, right? Also, it dilutes the digestive enzymes. So I live in a town, I call it Homer Simpsonville back in Texas because during World War II, they made all these industrial complexes all along the Gulf Coast to make all the gasoline to ship off to the war in Europe and the South Pacific. But we still exist, and we still make a lot of stuff. And if you add water into the reactions, you're going to cost that company millions of dollars because you slow down the reaction. If people that are in this room that know chemistry know that if you dilute down the reactants in a reaction, if you took any type of chemistry, you know that you're going to slow the reaction down. If you slow the reaction down, hey, you're wasting time. You're wasting valuable time. But I'll tell you this, though. They do rest. I'm going to go back to rest one more time. You know what they do in my little Homer Simpson town? They do shutdowns. You know what shutdowns are? They shut down the plant to rest. And what do? They go around and check every knob, screw, whatever. Because if they don't, you know what happens? We have an explosion like they had in Texas City that y'all probably heard about. And this kills a lot of people. They can't afford that. Because not only is it bad publicity on the company, it kills people, and they lose millions, probably billions of dollars with all that stuff they've lost. It costs a lot of money to put a plant up like that. So they have to rest. We need to rest. We have to understand that. It's costing us on the equivalent billions of dollars for our bodies if we don't. We understand that? So a lot of the bloating, belching, dyspepsia, malabsorption, infection is because we slowed the reaction down. And then this is causing leaky gut because all that stuff leads to all this bubbling. I mean, the leaky gut starts to happen because all this stuff's happening around there. The other thing is real interesting. Oh, this is one thing I put in about myself. So as a GI physician, if I go somewhere and I'm going to eat the potato salad and it's like at some big party, like a company party or something like that, I'm probably going to avoid drinking that much because I know that I need that acid to kill off some bacteria that if somebody didn't make it right. You know what I mean? So if I'm drinking all the stuff at the party, I'm just setting myself up to let those bugs get past my stomach and go right and cause some trouble. Diarrhea is on the way. All right. Another thing to think about, and I picked this up at the EQ Summit as well, is interestingly, is drinking with your meals is associated with an increased risk of depression. Could this be because we're somehow altering the microbiota when we drink like that? Maybe. I don't know. Studies need to be done on this. That's part of this gut-brain connection. Motility. Motility is very important. If you have a river and it doesn't flow, what do? You get problems. You get stagnation. Things are like stacked up, and what happens? The river, the water starts to stink. You start to get all these bad bugs growing, and it's a problem, right? GI tract is the same way. And so you get all these bubble stuff coming up, all this belching and nausea and infections and, constipation and increased pressure causes diverticulosis. But there's one doctor that comes to visit that'll improve this. And that is air. Can you believe that? Air. Air improves it. I think we talked a little bit about this the other day. And so, as I told you, in my field right now, the leaders in our field, gastroenterology, get up in front of these conferences. It was just a conference like this, and there's nothing but gastroenterologists there, and they're telling us, hey, you guys have to work on diaphragmatic breathing. Tell your patients to do diaphragmatic breathing. What is that? Take 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. 4 seconds in, and you breathe like a baby. You don't breathe like an adult. You don't breathe like, you breathe with your belly, like a baby or an opera singer. That's why the opera singers sort of tilt forward. You ever see the opera singers sort of tilt forward? They tilt forward to get their belly out. They go, and they go, ma, like that, right? People like that actually speak loud when I do that. Navy SEALs use it. They do 4, 4. They do 4 square. They call it 4 squares. 4 in, they hold it, 4, and they let out 4. Hold it 4. In 4. Hold it 4. Let out. Helps them relax when they're under pressure. When bullets are flying all around them, they just take that and they start doing that to keep themselves calm, right? Same thing with us. It calms us down. It calms us down. Why is the calm important? This is the reason why. When you take a deep breath in like that and let it out, it's like, hey, take a deep breath. It'll be okay. Well, now the science has proven that is true. It's true when you do that. When you do that deep breathing, it turns on the parasympathetic nervous system. What is that? So we talk about this. So let me explain. So in the body, we have the autonomic nervous system. So when you swallow something and it gets past here, guess what? Do you tell it to go to your esophagus, to go to your stomach, to go to your colon? You don't do it. It's on autopilot. When you sleep, do you tell your heart to beat or your lungs to breathe? You don't do that. It's on autopilot. That's the autonomic nervous system, right? So there's the parasympathetic and there's the sympathetic. Sympathetic is, the dog's chasing me, he's going to bite me. I better run. So you don't need your stomach to be digesting food when you're trying to run away from this dog that's about to bite you. The parasympathetic is relax. Everything's okay. The dog's not chasing you. Hey, let's get a bite to eat. Let's talk. I call that siesta. If you're in Spain, 2 hours for lunch, 2 hours for nap, and then you go back to work. the GI tract picks up when the parasympathetic nervous system kicks in. And that alleviates a lot of the GI problems that I see, like reflux, dyspepsia, constipation. Remember I told you the 30-year-old patient that said, Dr. Sweat, I can't have a bowel movement unless I relax. I said, you just diagnosed yourself. So she has to relax. So she can use that breathing technique to help her body relax. That's what the SEALs do too, right? So the brain-gut connection. There's changes in that are complex, and we went through that yesterday. It can be either from the brain to the gut or from the gut to the brain, and that leads to problems. And we can fix that with a number of different things that we talked about yesterday. And then finally, the intestinal wall, which we talked about right here, which is this complex interaction in the gut that leads to leaky gut. All these different things, all these different signals have to happen and be coordinated to work. And you can see any one of them could go wrong. The disruptors that we went through, all these things lead to that. They lead to this inflammatory process that can show up anywhere in your body. And this is the lead pipe of America and Western Europe. If we only eat processed foods, no fiber, everything gets absorbed in the small bowel. It causes the epidemic of obesity and diabetes that we're seeing throughout our country and Europe, leading to all these problems of inflammation, heart attacks, strokes, arthritis, lupus, Crohn's, you name it. We're missing out on the fiber and those short-chain fatty acids, which we know decrease inflammation, and multiple other metabolites that we need to keep our bodies healthy. As we saw here, the evidence is plain. Our microbiota, the type of bacteria we have in our gut, is shrunk, and it's much different than we see in the rest of the world. I would say this is a call for us to be missionaries, actually, because if you go overseas to these countries, Peru, Tanzania, Venezuela, Malawi, you'll pick up their bugs. You come back a healthier person. And maybe your spiritual health will be much better too for having served the Lord. But we can help do that in this country as well if we get back to the basics, back to Eden, as that book that we all know about as Adventists. Get back to fresh fruits, vegetables, rice, beans, grains. We'll avoid that mucolytic bloom we see down there on the right, and we'll be back over on the left with the rest of the world with healthier guts. We'll avoid this increase in all these different diseases. Now, this is just an association. I'm not saying this is a fact, but this is obviously happening. So this is what we see. And there's been a shift from more of an infectious disease-oriented medicine that I practice to an inflammatory medicine that we're practicing today. And the reason could be because of this lack of fiber to our guts is causing us as physicians. So we have antibiotics for all the infectious disease. So that's not the major concern for us now as much as it is this inflammatory diseases, metabolic syndrome, heart disease, stroke, cancer, all those things. We know cancer is related to all this. All this is inflammation. So would it be worth us just being comical? People looking at us as strange, a spectacle, as we talked about yesterday, 1 Corinthians 4:9, a spectacle unto the world. These people are a spectacle, but you know what? They're rock stars in their community, in the scientific world. Everybody who's a scientist in biology knows about these people. They're the stars. That's what we are, because there's no other group on the planet that does this like we do. There's the blue zones in other parts of the world, but we're the only one that it goes all over the world. Doesn't matter what ethnicity, what language, what location. We do it. And this is another slide. With that, I'm going to stop. And I just wanted to tell you that this shows that the health message is important. Medical science has caught up with us. There's still some things that they haven't. I showed you the 8 laws that come to visit. There's a few that they haven't really explored yet. But even the ones that they have, I listen to these guys and I read some of their writings, and the questions that they ask, we already know the answers based on the spirit of prophecy. We knew to do this before they ever had the science, had the equipment to do it, right? We just have to follow it by faith. But now we have the science to back it up. So now we have extra reason to follow this. All right, let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you for teaching us how we are fearfully and marvelously made. May it make an impression upon everyone here, and that I would be impressed too, dear Lord. You know I could do better. Help us all, we pray thee. Help us to be lights in our community to spread this message and to help people and help our society that we can overcome these inflammatory diseases. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.